Hello YouTube, what is going on? Running Gun Sports back here with another video. Today is our Pittsburgh Steelers off-season review. Today we got a lot to talk about. The Pittsburgh Steelers were a red hot team and really didn't finish red hot, obviously. And so we got a lot to talk about with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a very interesting team. The good, the bad, the ugly, all whatever. We're here to talk about it. And so if you have not already, please leave a like down below, subscribe, share this video with your friends, especially if you have any friends who are fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we'll talk about their future, the 2021 future, outlook of the 2021, or excuse me, the 2020 season, and their off season and their NFL draft, which just happened about a week ago. Rounds 2 and 3 were just a week ago today. So with that being said, follow our social media pages at rungun_sports on Instagram and at rungunsports on TikTok. And let's get right into the video with the Pittsburgh Steelers talking about their 2020 record. They went 12-4. Obviously, as I mentioned, started out 11-0, red hot, one of the greatest starts we've seen in NFL history, and fell off, lost 4 of the last 5 of their games. Just terrible, really. And luckily 3 of the 4 losses were to playoff teams, but one of the ones that really stands out about their losses, kind of takes away from the fact that all those losses were against playoff teams, is that they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football 17-27, and just extremely embarrassing. But other than that, if you can get past that, look past the Bengals loss, then it's really, their losses are decent losses. They lost to the Browns, obviously twice. They were knocked out in the wild card versus them, 37-48. But they also lost them in Week 17. Played them back-to-back weeks. Browns took them both times. The Steelers did beat them once in the regular season early on. But I think that the Steelers, what went wrong for them is they let the 11-0 start get to their head. And you play 16 games in the NFL season, and if you have a first round bye, you play divisional round playoffs, so 19 games, really 20 games if you're not a first round bye team. So you have 20 games, and 11 is only half of what you do. So the Steelers really just thought that they had done something at 11 wins, and which they were just weren't even halfway really. And their their schedule was very weak, and it wasn't very. A lot of people thought they were overrated. I myself didn't think they were that overrated. I mean, one way or another, winning 11 straight games in the National Football League is extremely impressive, and you gotta look at it some way. But the teams that they were playing at the time were not very good, and yes, they did play in a decently tough conference, but either way, they were overrated for sure. Knocked out in the first round of the playoffs versus the Cleveland Browns, one of their rival teams. That was a really big rivalry, I feel like, this year, bigger than it had been in the past. And it just, what went wrong? And I really think that Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool caused so much distraction for that team. And it's not the only reason they lost. That's not the only reason, but I think it's a big, almost main reason why they lost 4 of the last 5 games, and that's just unacceptable. And off the field distractions is just huge. And to win a Super Bowl, you have to have so many things go right. To win a championship in anything, you just have to have so much things go right. No injuries, no distractions, and have a good team, obviously. But having a good team is just a little bit of it. There's the mental aspect of the game, and they failed there, and they weren't in it mentally. They were in it for fun. They weren't in it to compete, and it showed when they lost in the first round of the playoffs and lost 4 of the last 5 games. Once they took that first loss, I just think that was a little too much for them to handle, and really unfortunate. But it is what it is, and I think that the Steelers next year, it's going to be interesting to see. And, when Juju Smith-Schuster had the whole issue with the TikTok thing, caused a fight during the Bengals game, he actually got lit up on one play because of it. And I think that it's just really immature. And I don't mind NFL players having social media accounts and having fun and whatnot, but Juju was going too far, dancing on the middle of the field on other teams' logos and doing TikTok dances and stuff. That's too far in my opinion, and people aren't going to like that. That's a sign of disrespect And so I don't blame the Bengals for getting offended over that. Some people may say, "Oh, the Bengals are soft or whatever," but I really don't think that at all. I just think that it's a sign of disrespect, and I don't think the Steelers would like it if someone from the Bengals or the Browns or the Ravens or someone came over and was dancing on their turf field on their logo. I don't think they'd be 100% okay with it and just be like, well, whatever. So as you can tell, this whole TikTok thing is becoming way too big of a problem than it really should have ever became, and that's because of Juju Smith and Chase Claypool. And Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster are great players. Don't get me wrong; both of them had great seasons last year, especially Chase Claypool for a rookie. But Juju Smith-Schuster, he really needs to be the leader of that receiving core, and not be immature. That's what you would expect from a Chase Claypool type of guy. And when Chase Claypool sees that as his from his role model, it's just a bad look, and he's gonna follow him. And we saw that he got in on some of the TikTok dances and stuff too. Just both of them caused too much distraction for the team. Meanwhile, their defense was incredible on the other side of the ball. T.J. Watt came in second for NFL Defensive Player of the Year, 43 solo tackles, 15 sacks, ranked first in the NFL in sacks. Two forced fumbles and 53 total tackles. And a lot of Steelers fans will say, I think T.J. Watt should have won the Defensive Player of the Year over Aaron Donald, but I don't personally think that. I think Aaron Donald is just so good. In my opinion, there's a great argument that Aaron Donald is the greatest football player right now in the NFL, and it's just he's so good, and you have to double team him. There's no way you can't double team him. Even when he's double teamed, he's still getting to your quarterback. He's still sacking him. He's still forcing fumbles. He's still giving your quarterback a nightmare and giving him a tough time in the pocket. And if you double team him, you're going to leave another defensive lineman on that line a chance to do well as well. So, I think that he just makes the team better, which is, football is the ultimate team sport. I don't think there's any debate about that. And Aaron Donald is really a great team player and just makes his teammates better. And so that's why I think Aaron Donald there's a real argument for him to be the best uh, player in the entire football league, and it's a very valid argument in my opinion. And I don't think T.J. Watt has that type of presence that Aaron Donald does. I think T.J. Watt is second to Aaron Donald, obviously in defensive category. He's the stats, 15 sacks is really impressive considering the fact that T.J. Watt's more of an outside linebacker defensive end. So he's not blitzing the quarterback every time. He can be out in coverage as well, but most of the time he is on the line rushing the quarterback. But either way, he still is a great player, and the Steelers it really helped the Steelers last year go to 11-0, make the playoffs. I mean, the Steelers feel like there's just a big letdown going 11-0, and they were it was jump on the Steelers bandwagon first 11 weeks of the NFL, and then Steelers fell off, lost to the Washington football team, and that was a really close game too. I just think that, like I said earlier, I just think them taking their first loss, it was a little too much for them, and unfortunately, I think it would have been a bit different if they had lost by a lot more than at the very end of the game. I just think that it was just heartbreaking for them really to suffer their first loss in week 12, 13. And so that's what I think. Moving on now to the receivers, we talked about Juju Smith and Chase Claypool and the distractions that they caused, but they also had very impressive seasons. Juju Smith-Schuster, 97 receptions, 831 yards, 9 touchdowns. Those are really good stats right there. And Juju Smith-Schuster, despite being probably one of the more hated receivers on the NFL, still goes out there, puts up very good numbers as you can tell there, and he comes through. He's a very consistent player on my fantasy football team this year, and he was very nice to have, to say the least. And even though he was hated on a lot, he still comes through. It doesn't let the hate get to him, which I don't have a problem with. It's just don't do dumb things is what I think about it. And dancing on other teams' logos is just stupid in my opinion, and just not necessary at all, and extremely uncalled for. But moving on, Chase Claypool, the rookie, as I just mentioned, not far behind Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster is a very great receiver, an elite receiver, and Chase Claypool's a rookie. He had a great year last year, 62 receptions, 873 yards, and 9 touchdowns. He had 4 touchdowns in one game early on in the season. He's a great player, and he looked like he's been in the league for a while, even though it was just his first season. So that was really impressive to me. See how well Chase Claypool played in his rookie season, and I was really impressed by that. Ben Roethlisberger coming back from playing 2 games in 2019, 3,803 yards, 33 touchdowns. So he had a great year as well. If it wasn't for Alex Smith, he would have had my vote for comeback of the year, comeback player of the year, and Alex Smith definitely deserved it more in my opinion. But Ben Roethlisberger still had a great year, and a lot of people thought that he would retire possibly, or maybe move on to a different team, especially after the loss versus the Browns. He was kind of on the bench crying. A lot of people thought that that would have been his last game he played. Surprisingly, he came back. Surprisingly to me, in my opinion, he came back and they did sign Dwayne Haskins and they did re-sign Josh Dobbs as well. And it's going to be interesting to see who the starting quarterback is. Do I think that possibly that Ben Roethlisberger will hand the torch off to Dwayne Haskins at some point in the season? Possibly, yes. I do think that will happen and could, but do I also wouldn't be surprised if Ben Roethlisberger started all 16 games, 17 games this season? Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either way. But I think that you got to plan for the future. Ben Roethlisberger doesn't have many more years in the tank, and it's well and obvious. But almost 4,000 yards at his age is extremely impressive considering the injuries he has taken, and so that was really impressive. But going back to the receiving core that he has, very solid receiving core. But one thing that really didn't help the team at all also was the drops. The drops was terrible. The Steelers ranked second in the NFL for most dropped passes with 30, one behind the number one team in dropped passes, the Dallas Cowboys, who had 31 dropped passes in the 2020 season. Just that's a horrible stat. They made the playoffs with that. That's extremely embarrassing. Deontay Johnson had 16 drop passes himself. It's just ugly to watch that team play with so many drops, and that's almost 2 drops per game. And you're NFL talent, you can't be dropping that many passes, and that's just horrible. 16 drops. You're responsible for more than half of your team's drops, and I it's just unacceptable for sure. But moving on to the free agency, the Pittsburgh Steelers re-signed Juju Smith-Schuster to a 1-year deal, and it was going to be interesting to see if Juju Smith-Schuster went somewhere. If he did go somewhere, Steelers we heard, or excuse me, the Chiefs we heard were showing interest in him, which would have been really interesting to see Juju Smith-Schuster go to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, did not go to the Chiefs, signed with the Steelers, and I think that Juju Smith-Schuster will be out of Pittsburgh by the end of the 2021 season. I just don't. I just think that it's causing too much distractions. Mike Tomlin, 14 winning seasons of 14 years of being the Steelers head coach, he doesn't put up with that kind of crap. And I think Juju Smith-Schuster brings kind of that stuff to the team, and Mike Tomlin's not a fan of it at all. You can tell he was the one who made Juju Smith-Schuster stop doing the dances, and so I think Mike Tomlin is a very great coach. 14 seasons, no losing seasons, but he's got to get his players under control. And I think last year was just it was too little, too late. Moving on to the Steelers draft class. Steelers in the first round with the 24th overall pick in the draft selected running back Najee Harris from Alabama. Najee Harris is a greatest or best running back in college football at the time by far, and won the Doak Walker 2020. Had a great season, really his full season of starting. Last year he started a good amount, but was sharing loads with Josh Jacobs. And in 2018 in the national championship game, Najee Harris was a freshman, came in, gave them a spark that they needed versus Georgia. And I think if it wasn't for Najee Harris, I would have found them having a hard time really winning that game. He came in and was just 10-yard rushes after 10-yard rushes after 10-yard rushes, not stopping, and really wore out that Georgia team who was giving it their all, and fresh legs. That's why depth is so important, why you see Alabama winning so many national championships, because you got a 5-star guy who goes out for an injury or a guy who's not performing well, they'll put a 5-star guy right back in there, and it's just extremely impressive. Nick Saban continues to amaze everyone in the college football world. He's a insane recruiter and greatest college football coach of all time, without a doubt. But Najee Harris's 2020 season, 251 rush attempts, 466 yards, 26 touchdowns. So very impressive stats right there. As I mentioned, Doak Walker Award winner. And he's really going to help that Steelers team out. And they didn't really have a running game last year with James Conner left for Arizona during this offseason. And they were kind of one-dimensional and needed to pass the ball. But Najee Harris is really going to help them out a ton, and I think it's going to be really exciting to see what he does. In his whole career at Alabama is 4 years, 638 rush attempts, 3,843 yards and 46 touchdowns. So just great stats right there, and 26 touchdowns in one season. That's that's an SEC record, literally, and it's just insane and very impressive. And I can't wait to see what Najee Harris really does with that Steelers team. And so, moving on to their second round pick, we're just going to be going over their the first 2 round picks. And second round of the NFL draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Pat Freiermuth at the number 55th overall selection. Pat Freiermuth only played 4 games in the 2020 season, and so his stats aren't very good. 23 receptions, 310 yards, one touchdown, and so obviously not that good of stats. But other than Kyle Pitts, we all knew Kyle Pitts was going to be the best tight end in this class without a doubt. He's a great player, and his Pat Freiermuth's stats are not too far behind Kyle Pitts. And the reason I think Kyle Pitts went above Pat Freiermuth is because Kyle Pitts' type of play as a tight end is translating more to the NFL than we see Pat Freiermuth. Pat Freiermuth is more of your traditional tight end that you see, and can block well, can catch well, can run well. He's more of a George Kittle than he is a guy who just blocks, but he's still a great receiver, and he's above average receiver. I mean, he can, like I said, I compare my NFL comparison is George Kittle for him, and that's a really good comparison considering George Kittle is the number one tight end right now, arguably for by some people, him or Travis Kelce. But and so it's gonna be really exciting to see. But as I mentioned, comparing the stats, Kyle Pitts is 3 years at University of Florida. He had 100 receptions, 1,492 yards, and 18 touchdowns. And Pat Freiermuth had 92 receptions, 1,180 yards, and 16 touchdowns. So not even far behind the best tight end in the class. And I think Pat Freiermuth will have a very successful NFL career. And we saw that the Steelers, that Eric Ebron was just not going to get it done for them at all. And Pat Freiermuth really helped them out a lot, or will really help them out a lot. And Eric Ebron had a number of dropped passes himself. But moving on to our 2021 projection, the Steelers have an extremely tough schedule, and I think that they'll go 9-7. I think that they're not going to have a very good year. I do think Najee Harris has got a really good shot to win Rookie of the Year, and I'm really excited to see if he does or not, because Najee Harris is one of the better running back prospects we've seen in a while, and it's going to be really exciting to see. That will wrap it up for today's video. If you guys have not already, please leave a like down below, subscribe, share this with your friends. We're going to be moving on to the AFC West next week for our off-season reviews, starting with the Los Angeles Chargers, a team who I think has a ton of potential for the next coming years. Thank you.